Hi, Shamara. How are you today? Can you hear me now?
I can.
Perfect. How's it going?
It's going. Warning. Um, I'm single momming it for 3 weeks while my husband
Oh,
is in Alaska. And so my kid's gonna be popping in and out for a second because he's
oh,
going to
yeah.
bed. So
Okay. Oh, that's a long stretch for him to be gone all at once.
my mom's
Oh,
coming on is coming on Thursday to hang with us for a week. So
oh,
that'll
that's great. So you get to have a visit. That's nice. Oh, I bet you're gonna miss him. That's such a long time.
it is a bit long.
Oh.
Yeah.
I bet it if it was like a day or two, it might be like, oh, good, I get some time to myself. But when it's 3 weeks, oi,
3 weeks is well. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna tell you, 2 weeks, you'd be like, I get
yeah,
my boy to myself. We get to have fun, do what we want to
right.
do. But after that, you're just kind of like, okay, this is long
I mean,
enough.
that's almost a month. Yeah, that's a while. Yeah, I feel like even like a week, you know. But it's nice that your mom will get to visit. So you guys will get to have a special like time, just the three of you. That's kind of nice. Yeah. Oh, but it's a lot for you to juggle, I bet too.
Yes. Like, oh, I gotta make dinner and I gotta run and I gotta take him to school and I gotta pick him
Right.
up.
Oh
When it's
man.
all you, it's like, oh, I
Hmm.
didn't sign up for this. So
Yeah, right. You're like, okay, all on me this week.
yeah.
You can just later be like, all right, so remember that time that it was just me taking care of him for 3 weeks straight. Well, honey, I'm gonna go to Mexico for a week with the girlfriends and you
Oh
get him
no.
all to yourself.
Trust me, he owes me. He went away for 3 months once.
Whoa, wow.
I was like, oh, that was something else. But he got
Oh
through it.
man, yeah.
Mhm.
So you're like, Psh, I got through 3 months. I can do 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's much easier than 3 months. 3 months was outrageous.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, you get into the rhythm of it all, and
Right.
do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Man, by the time they came back, I'd be like, who are you? Right? Like, do you live here? Man,
Yeah,
I
with like
hardly recognized you.
FaceTime and all that, it makes it easy.
Yeah, right. You can still talk every day. Yeah, technology, I'm sure, helps a lot. But yeah. Oh, well, it sounds like you've got this. But alrighty. So as we're diving in today, did you have any ideas of maybe emotions you want to explore or certain kind of scripts you want to look at, maybe character types, or did you want to work on? I know we had talked quite a bit last time about the way that commercial scripts are different, um, and getting that more like commercially kind of sound. Do you want to maybe do some narration? What are you thinking?
Yeah, let's go with some narration. I Yeah, or if you wanted to do emotions, we could
Sure.
go from there as well. So it's
Yeah.
which way do
Well,
you
even
think?
with narration, I mean, I feel like there are so many different types of narration jobs that you can do. And so they'll have different kinds of moods. And I feel like you're kind of setting the mood with your voice a lot. Like if you did something kind of spooky, or you did something very heartwarming, or you did something very educational, like you're trying to make education and learning fun for kids, or you're doing something that's a little more like a serious lecture or something, you know? So I feel like it can drastically vary on the kind of um energy that we give to it. So we could look at some contrasting narration, like children's books probably really playful. You get to do some character voices with that. And then, if you do something that's more like a history book or something, then that's going to be, a little more dry, a little more academic, educational. Um, so is the purpose to entertain? Are we doing character voices? Is it strictly narration? Those kind of questions for yourself. So those are even just thinking about books. We have other types of narration too. It could be like e-learning, it could be like a corporate training kind of thing, it could be a
I
car
remember
GPS.
we did a couple of those earlier.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you've got all kinds of different things. So I definitely think it can be fun to play with some of those different types of narration. All right. So when we're thinking about that, I think the first thing that you can look at is fiction and nonfiction, or kind of the two biggest categories. Like, is this fiction? Is it, like a fun story, or is it going to be something that's like actually happened? So those are like the two largest categories I think of with narration. Um, but then
Before we get
even with
started, can I
that,
ask you a question?
yeah,
What are your thoughts on AI voiceover? Because I've
yeah.
noticed a lot more of that happening. Like I was on Spotify and I was looking at all the audiobooks on there, and I'd say a significant amount of them were AI generated
Yeah.
voices.
Yeah, and on Spotify, you're going to find that more than other platforms, and here is why. So, Spotify now, I recommend not working through Findaway Voices because they own it now. And they now, if you do anything that goes up on Spotify for like the authors, they have rights to your intellectual property then. They can make TV shows or movies or sequels to your book and not pay you anything. And for narrators who work through them, they now the newer
They own your
contracts
voice.
say they own your voice and they can duplicate it. So I tell everyone, do not do any work for Spotify through Findaway Voices, because then they can just use your voice or your ideas for free forevermore.
Then what is
Um,
the benefit? Like I guess what would be the incentive?
So, I mean, some people have taken jobs where they're training AI models. And I mean, the incentive is that they pay you a lot. So, for instance, like one of my students, they were like, "Hey, I got this audition and it pays like $12,000, but it should train AI." And I was like, I mean, that's up to you. But here's the thing, then they get to use your voice for however long that contract says. And if you're training the AI, then they're using basically your voice, forevermore for that particular AI, product, whatever it is. So I was like, I mean, it's up to you, but personally, I'm not going to do any AI training stuff or anything that, um, you know, oh no, I lost you. Rats. Seems like maybe it was just the battery. Oh, there you are. I lost you for a sec. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I personally am not going to do anything that's related to AI, because for me it's my own like self-respect that I'm like, yeah, I don't want to give you the right to use my voice however and whenever you want. Like, I don't want people to be able to take my voice and make it say anything. Like, they could literally say anything. They could say really offensive things that I would be horrified to have my voice say. So like that's one thing, that it's like a self-respect thing, but it also is the industry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, honey. Once you're done, brush your teeth and then we'll call dad.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's sweet. He misses dad. Oh. He's like, I want to talk to him. I love
Yeah, he's like,
it.
oh, and I'm like, when you're
Yeah.
done. When you're done.
Yeah. So I feel like industry wise, it's just not a precedent that I really want to set, or like something I want to like play into. Like from a moral perspective, I'm like, okay, like I don't want to take jobs away from other artists, or so I'm just like, I don't want to be involved in it. So that's just my personal choice. I choose to not be involved in any of that. Um,
What is the incentive? That's the part I missed. I think
Money. It's just a lot of money. It's a really
they
good
pay you a
paying
lot
job.
for your work.
Yeah. So like if they, paid you to do a commercial, they might pay you $1,000, and then they'll be like, oh, hey, I'll pay you like that one that my student found was like $12,000. Another student had a job that would have been like full time for like 6 months. But it paid a lot. Like it paid like 50 grand, but it was training AI for a GPS system. And I was like, I mean, up to you. But I was like, I mean, it's good money. Like, yeah, you make, 50 grand in like 6 months. So that's what it is. It's the incentive is that they're getting paid very well. But to me, I'm like, okay, you get paid well right now, but then you're taking jobs away from yourself in the future. So that's where personally I don't like it. And I mean, I know right now, I mean, you can tell that it's
Yeah,
AI if you
I was
listen
gonna
to it.
say they're
Like,
not good.
I'm like, I'll listen on like my Kindle, have it read to me, and I'm like, I don't like it. I'm like, this is awkward and robotic and weird, and it's just not my cup of tea. So I feel like you can tell that it is done with AI. And just like out of curiosity, I've experimented with AI and like tested it out, but I'm like, it never is quite as good as a real person, I feel like. And yeah, I could see it saving people time, but I'm like, even if you used it to like write an email or something, you still have to go back and reread it and like rework
Yeah,
everything, you know? So you can be like, hey, like make me an outline of this or whatever. Like it can help, I feel like, or be like, hey, can you give me some ideas for this? And it's like, oh, here are some suggestions, you know? So I feel like it can kind of get you started when you're stuck. But the problem is like the more we train it, the better and better it's gonna get. So I feel like honestly, at some point, we're gonna get to where people are like, I don't even trust anything like on the internet. Like, I don't know what's real and what's not. Um, and I honestly feel like we're gonna see people going a lot more towards like going to live performances of like musicians in person and like plays at the theater, things like that, just because people are gonna be like, I want to have an actual connection. Because I think ultimately it's probably gonna kind of like distance people even more, you know. Um, but yeah, for me, it's more of like a moral thing that I'm like, no matter how much they paid me, I'm like, it still to me is kind of an icky thing morally. And I'm like, I just don't want to do that to myself or anyone else in the industry. And that's what a lot of the union stuff with the
and
strikes
yeah,
was about the writers saying, you're, using AI to take our jobs. And so a lot of the renegotiation with the unions was people saying, I don't want my face used without my permission. Because, like, some movies and TV shows and things that started doing that, like taking people who are dead, let's say, and
yeah,
using their face and their voice, and their families are unhappy about that. And are like, you can't just use our loved ones, physical self and not have to like pay for that. Or, and some people just don't want them to do it at all. Like, they're like, we want their work to stand for itself. We don't want like fake work that's not really them, but it looks like them. Like, some people just don't want that. And so, like, a lot of that negotiation was because of AI, because of writing and because of acting jobs. And it's kind of getting to the point where, I mean, literally, people will be like, we're just going to do like a scan of your body before we even do like all the filming and stuff. And they're like, that way, like, if we need to redo something or whatever, and you're like off on another project later, we can just use your body scan and like AI you in. Um, and I just personally am like, that's kind of icky to me. Like, I'd much rather it so you as a person, as an individual, have to decide what you want to do. Like, AI is going to be out there. People are going to take those jobs. But just for me, I'm not really a fan of it. And then an author I know recently, like, was saying, he was like, oh my gosh, I found all this AI and I can like have them narrate my books and stuff. And I was like, so can I just like talk to you for a second? I was like, because they were like posting on Facebook and all excited. I was like, hey, so like you're a writer and love writing, and he's actually worked in film and stuff too. And I was like, so think about this. Like, you don't want AI to take your writing jobs, right? And I was like, as a voice actor, like I don't want AI taking my acting jobs either. And so, and I like just chatted with him, was like, think about it from our perspective. Like, you're all excited about this and that's great. But I was like, one, it's not going to be as high of quality as you'll get with an actual actor. And two, I was like, you can find people, that'll do a great job. And like, you can do stuff like royalty share if you're like, yeah, but I don't have enough money to pay them or whatever. It's like way cheaper. I was like, find someone who's willing to do a royalty share and like take a percentage. Like, find somebody who's willing to work with you on that, or do like a lower hourly rate plus like a portion of that royalty share, like a lower percentage or whatever. But I was like, there's so many other options. You can find people just kind of starting out in voiceover. And, I was like, so he actually ended up not going with AI, and so I was really glad that we like talked about it, because I was just like, Yeah, you can. But I was like, I really genuinely hope you don't, and this is someone that like I've worked with in the past and is like, an acquaintancey friend kind of person, a colleague. And I was like, I know I haven't like talked to you in a few years or whatever, but I was like, hey, like, can I chat with you a little bit? And he ended up having actual voice actors do it. So I was really happy about that. But I think a lot of it is just like perspective. People are like, oh, this will make things easier for me. And oh, like I don't have to pay that much and da 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 da. But I'm also like, hey, but like it's really not going to be as high of quality. And then two, as a creative, I'm like, or anyone, like any person, I'm like, think about it like if you're, as a secretary or something, do you want a computer taking your job? If you're an attorney, do you want a computer writing up contracts instead of you? Like, so I'm just like, if anyone thinks about it from their perspective and going, do I really want to give away my, like something I'm good at and I've worked at and I'm skilled at, and that's my profession? Do I want to give that away to a robot, basically? And I feel like most people will be like, no, I don't want that, you know? And I even think of people who are like a professional like dog trainer and dog walker. I mean, yeah, you probably can train a robot to walk a dog, but like the whole point is like connection and having that interaction. And I feel like we're gonna see AI getting better, but then I think we're also gonna see people as a whole going, oh, we don't really want this because like we're lonely and we want connection and we want authenticity and like real people. So I think I think people are going to push back against it. Like I think some things will end up being more like computer driven, but I do think that other things are going to be where people are like, yeah, I'd much rather look at like art that was painted by a human.
I agree. I can definitely tell the difference. Um,
Yeah. I've looked at some of the art and I'm like, "Oh, that's so bad." Like the fingers are all
or it's
weird
just
and they've got like
too
20 of them.
perfect. There's some, I don't know. I don't think I'm looking for perfection all the
Yeah.
time. Like I think,
Hmm.
that human aspect of things is what makes
Yeah.
things interesting. And I will say with the voiceover like audiobooks, I usually try if there is a option with an actual
Oh, yeah. For
person, I
sure.
usually choose
Same.
that one.
Yeah.
But a couple times like there was no other option, and I
Yeah.
like
And
you
you're
can
like, I
tell
really
that.
just want to listen to the book and I don't really have time to sit down and read it. I can multitask. Yeah.
But they're bad though. It's like
Yeah. I don't
like
really
they'll be
like it
talking
either.
about something sad, and it's like
And they're just like
the
blah
the
blah blah
voice
blah
just
blah blah
doesn't
blah.
match.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. 1 second
Yeah,
again.
go ahead.
I'm trying to see if I can.
Oh yeah. Yeah, down in the left. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gotta go check on the baby. It's all good.
Sorry, gotta. This kid will procrastinate to go to bed, and then tomorrow he won't
Oh.
want to wake up.
And then I'll be like, I'm so tired. I can unfortunately relate. Yeah, I do that often. I'm like dragging my feet and I'm like, oh my God, do this and this and this. And then time just
I
goes by and I'm like, how did I get so late? So I can relate to that. Yeah, so I do think ultimately, people are gonna change. Like I even see in some of the younger generation, like they'll be like, oh, like your photos over edited. Like I just want to see like you. And we got like family photos through like a Groupon recently and I just said like I didn't have them change the lighting or anything. I was like, send it to print. Like it's totally
want to see the
unedited, just like the natural everything.
yeah,
And
no
like we have a
filter
big
and all
canvas
that.
of it. And I was like, you know what? That's nice. Like that's what we authentically look like and are in this moment. And my husband was like, oh, like I've gained weight and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, if we edit it, we could slim you down. But I'm like, someday our like kids are gonna want to see what we actually looked like. And they aren't going to want the airbrushed like perfect version. They're going to want to see like this is what you actually are. And even like our wedding photos, I was like, you know what? Just do like tweak them a little, but like, like the lighting, like make sure you can see everything and stuff. But I was like, you know what? This is just like family and friends. And like, I was like, just the minimal editing, just like make sure that like you can see everybody. And if someone's like eyes went red or something, you can like fix that. But, I'm like, you don't have to fix every stray hair and stuff. Like,
Yeah, light touch up. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Just like let us look real. And so I feel like that I think people for a while were like really excited, like, ooh, I can airbrush myself and look like a cover of a magazine and like it's fun to play with, but I think ultimately people like authenticity. So that's my perspective on it. I do think that we're gonna see people pulling away from technology more and wanting like real connection with real people and like less auto tuning of music and stuff. And like I love to hear just like raw vocals. So I
Me
love listening
too.
to like old like vinyl from like the 60s, before people were
Although
fixing everything
people
or like
really know how to sing back then,
50s.
though.
Yeah, exactly. Um and it's funny, I've seen posts where it's like an artist singing like live, like Katy Perry sang in a bathroom, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, she sounds so bad." And then like someone I know who's like a Broadway performer, she's amazing, posted a video of her playing Elsa in Chicago at the Paramount, and people were like, "Is it just me or does she sound really bad?" And I was just like, on both of those, I commented and was like, okay, this is an example of how people have learned to
Their
only
ears.
hear auto-tuned, like melodyne, corrected things, and they're not letting people be real and raw and human. And I was like, I feel like this is a problem. Like, this is what a natural voice that is unedited sounds like. And it's like a photo that's like photoshopped and that's just like, they took a
Right.
Polaroid picture. So it's the difference there. And so I think people will go back to that, but I think we've definitely gotten used to that. And then everyone's depressed because we're all like, oh, I can't live up to that, perfect standard that I'm held to.
Mhm. I
But
get it.
it's my hope that people will reject it. But I totally feel you on the like when it's the only option. I definitely will occasionally listen on Kindle. Yeah, go for it.
Is he still pooping?
Oh.
He's brushing his teeth.
Okay, great. So you don't have your voice lesson?
I do. I am
Not anymore. Oh.
crazy boy with the crazy hair. Um, take it away.
The longest teeth brushing ever.
Yeah, there was a few other things that happened in between there.
Probably got distracted, playing around. Yeah.
Reading his book. That's
Ah,
why I had to
he's
go.
a reader. Yeah, he gets lost in those other worlds. I love it. That's awesome. That's great. So, yeah. So those are my thoughts on it, but I think it's not something that's going to go away, but I think it's something that people will choose and go, "Hey, I really would like reality,
Yeah.
something
Oh yeah,
more
I think
real."
like
So,
a lot of people are like true artists and would never like
yeah.
I don't know. I'm learning, about some of this, but I was just
Yeah.
wondering um why somebody would do that. It just seems like
Right.
it would be not beneficial in the end.
In the end, in the long run, exactly. So that's where for me, I just early on decided I wasn't going to audition for any of those or be a part of that. Um, and I mean, I've talked to multiple people in the industry, and I feel like a lot of people relate, but I think some people are just like, I need the money, so they do it. And I can't really blame them either. I'm like, hey, like we all got to eat. So
Yeah,
I'm
it
like, all right,
depends on your
is what it
circumstance.
is. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. So I was thinking that since we had done some more like educational narration in the past, I was thinking maybe we could start with some more like audiobook. So maybe doing some fiction might be fun. Like we could do a little mystery, maybe some like romance, a little like sci-fi or like a spooky story, just like giving you some different kinds of dramatic settings and types of stories was kind of what I was thinking.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sound good? All right, cool. So that way, so one thing I feel like about audiobook narration, um, is that ambiance, setting the scene, giving them the mood. It's kind of like when you watch film noir and it's all like, the shadows and you see like half of their faces in shadow and the other you can see and they're like, everything's like stark contrasts and they're setting like just from that first glance, you're like, "Oh, there's a whole mood here," or they have music that sets a mood as you're watching a movie. I kind of see us as because all they have is our voice. We're not just like you said, you're like, it doesn't sound sad at all. So we are giving that to the listener. And I've had students sometimes say, am I supposed to just like read it out loud? Like, am I supposed to put my spin on it or am I supposed to just like let the words speak for themselves? The way I look at it is that whatever the author intended, it's your job to kind of be their voice, right? It's in their mind and they don't have the skill to act it. And I definitely think that voice acting and narration, all of that is a skill, which is, I mean, even
Oh,
evidenced by one of my students who worked with me for like a year and then he took a few years off and he was like, I kind of got away from it. And now he's getting back into it. And he's like, it's like everything I learned, I'm just like out of
oh,
practice and it's like sloppy now. And I'm like, oh, you were in such a great place. What happened? And now he's having to relearn and practice. And I'm like, this is a really good example of like where you started and then where you got to and now where you're at. And he's kind of like lost it and he has to be practicing more again. And it definitely is a skill and it's something we have to, develop. And so a lot of authors are like, oh no, like I do not want to narrate my own stuff. No, no, no. And even like Britney Spears, her book, I listened to Michelle Williams did the narration and I thought she did such a beautiful job of it. And Britney Spears did just like the intro to it, just like a talking to you before it like really starts. Um, and just listening to that, I was like, oh, I'm so glad she didn't narrate her own book. Like, she does a beautiful job with her voice when she's singing, Like, I mean, she does really cool effects, like the vocal fry. Like, she does really cool stuff with her voice. But for the narration, it's like choppy and she's pausing in awkward places and it doesn't have the flow. And so it's like you don't get the full thought sometimes. And so it's just kind of a little bit awkward. And then Michelle Williams did a beautiful job of putting personality and the moods, like the emotions, where it's sad, where it's frustrating, where she's just given up, where she's finding joy, like snuggling with her babies, like those beautiful intimate moments. Like you hear all of these changes and like her joy and happiness of like when she first was doing like Mickey Mouse Club with her friends and then like, first love and stuff. And so you go on this journey and I thought she did a beautiful job with the book. So I was really happy that she chose to do that because I was like the book is so much more impactful when you had Michelle do it instead. So I really was delighted with that. And I loved also that she did the intro because it's such a great example of the contrast. And I'm like, she could have done it, and I don't think it would have been terrible, but I just think that it had everything she wanted. Like she worked with the voice actor to get it to be expressed the way that she wanted it to be said. And it was beautiful. Like the end result was really, really great. So that stood out to me as a good example of like if you want to hear the difference. And I mean, I've had times when I started a book and the author did their own narration, and I was like, I can't listen to this. I'll have to just read it myself. Like, and it was just painful. And I was just like, ugh, I can't. Like, I really wanted to read the book, and I was like, nope, I can't. I can't listen to this. And I hate to say that, but it definitely is a skill. So we're gonna play with the moods and the flow because it's setting up the emotion and the context. So I would say, as like a general rule, commercials are going to be a little more peppy, a little more high energy, a little extra, just like a little bigger energy, like a little theatrical, but like still with like trying to sound natural. So it's kind of a weird balance there. And the way I like to describe it is it's like you just took a few shots of espresso right before doing it. It's kind of like the commercial feel. And then we've got the characters, which is like you stepped into their world, you stepped into their shoes, and you're actually living in that world. So like Meisner says, acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. So it's you living that world. And then as a narrator, you're creating that entire world for them. So, like, as the character, you're living in that world, but as the narrator, you are the one creating the world for everyone listening. So, narration, I know people who don't really like doing it. I actually love doing it, and I think it's a lot of fun. Um, so I really like too when we get something that kind of gives you a little bit of direction as well, that it's like, it tells you kind of what's going on in the background as well. So I'm going to give you an example of like a more mysterious kind of one. So they're gonna have like a fade in to like an eerie silence. And then they're gonna have like a faint ticking of a clock echoing in the distance. So they're gonna kind of like do something on this particular narration to kind of set the stage a little bit for you. So this would be more like the graphic audio where they're like a movie in your mind kind of a thing. But I also like, so the narrator, they said low and deliberate. Um, so it looks like this is actually, it might be like a true crime more vibe um, for this particular one, but you're still going to be setting that mood, is the idea here. So, and it could be like a TV show or something too, and you could be a narrator and they're like showing pictures or like, something. But yeah, so this particular one, I just gave you an example because they give you kind of like it gives you like an idea of the mood of what's going on. So let's go ahead and try like a lower pitch and very deliberate with the way that you read it. Um, and it's supposed to be kind of eerie feeling. Yeah. So let's go ahead and try this snippet here.
Okay. I feel like I don't use my lower register.
Oh, yeah. So try for me, do a little sigh down, go. Ah.
Ah, okay. There are stories that whisper through the corridors of time, secret, buried beneath the weight of forgotten memory. Tonight, we uncover one such tale, a mystery, shrouded in shadows, where truth and deception dance a deadly waltz.
Nice. Yeah, I think you're already getting that different kind of mood and feel that it's like a spooky story around a campfire kind of feeling. Yeah. Nice. Very good. Awesome. So, yeah, you're getting
Now
that
I know
feel.
I can't trust you. I learned that just now.
Oh! You're already off to a good start. You got the lower pitch. All right, so that's an example just to give you more direction with it. But here's just a snippet of a book. So this is going to be if you were just like reading a book out loud, right? So this would be, it looks like it's maybe like so it's like a cops and robbers or like a murder and you're solving the murder kind of a thing. So it looks like you have a female detective who's probably your main character. Um, and it looks like she found a piece of paper. So yeah, maybe someone left it for her. She's been digging around too much, right? It seems like a clue. So yeah, so this one I'm going to follow those kind of general good narration rules. So I'm going to do things like one, observe the punctuation. So when I see a period, I'm going to leave it a little more space there. If I have a comma, it's more just like a little sip of air, a little lift, and then I keep going. Um, and then since I have that one spot that's like in the quotation marks, I'll probably pause before that and then say that, like, make it either be weightier or a little like change something about it. So it's like, this is important right here. Remember this. Um, so yeah, I think observing the punctuation is a big one. We're also going to be thinking about the connected thought. So I really want to be sure that when it's a fluid connected thought, it's all in one breath, ideally. So like Detective Evelyn Graves arrived just past midnight. Pause. Her coat clung to her from the relentless downpour. Breath. Her expression unreadable. Period. In her gloved hand, pause, she held a letter. Pause. Anonymous. Pause. Cryptic. Pause. Right? So I'm going to observe all of those. And I want to be sure that whenever I have that connected thought, all of that flows together and that people are going to get this is that continuous thought. That's the full thought here. Um, so the flow, I think, is really important. And as a general rule in narration, you're going to go just slightly slower than the norm. So however you normally would speak, your normal speed, just challenge yourself to just go slightly slower than you typically would go. Now, one of the cool things is that with narration, like audiobooks and whatnot in apps. I mean, even with podcasts, with YouTube, we see that people can change the speed. So they can make it faster or slower. But just as a general rule, we typically go just a little bit slower for narration. Whereas commercials go faster than you normally would speak. Narration goes a little bit slower. And then the characters, you want to really just kind of portray them in the like natural speed that you would have. All right. So that's just kind of a good general rule. So I would say those are kind of the most important things to start with. So could we go through it thinking about the phrasing, the pauses, where you're placing those breaths, and just a little slower tempo?
Detective Evelyn Graves arrived just past midnight. Her coat clung to her from the relentless downpour, her expression unreadable. In her gloved hand, she held a letter, anonymous, cryptic. 4 words, scrawled in hurried ink. The truth is buried.
Nice. Great job with the pausing. I loved it. It was not rushed. That is beautiful. And here's the thing. When we own our pauses, it actually is a lot more powerful. So, like with actors that are performing live, there's power in those still moments where they're like busy and then they pause and like freeze for a moment. That's like what we're doing. We're having that moment of stillness where we just let it be empty for a moment. And that's a powerful, powerful way to approach that. I feel like so often people want to hurry those pauses. You did not. And it was like, oh, so good. Yes, excellent. So thank you. You took the notes. It was so good. All right. So then
I'm writing them
she's
down.
in a relentless downpour. All right. So it's like a dark and stormy night. Like it's past midnight. Probably the world is kind of a lot more quiet because people are at home and sleeping for the most part. There's, a relentless downpour. It's like a lot of rain and stormy, right?
I'll call you later.
Aw.
One.
Aw. So sweet. Oh, I love it. He's like, Mama, I need a
He's
hug.
a hug. He's a hug monster.
Oh, I love it. That's so sweet. He's like, I got to get my cuddles before I can
Right.
sleep. So sweet. All right, beautiful. So, thinking about the setting now. I'm all they have. My voice is all they have. So I want it to feel what she would be feeling there. I want them to get that point of view, that strong perspective. So I want it to feel like, it's dark, it's past midnight. there's a big thunderstorm, right? Her expression's unreadable. So I want uncertainty, like how is she feeling and what's happening here? So I want the listener to kind of be on the edge of their seat and be like, "Oh gosh, it's kind of scary. What's going to happen? Like, is somebody going to jump out at her with a knife? Like, is she about to, jump off a bridge? We don't know what's going to happen." So I want them to be kind of that suspenseful feeling. Um, and it's very ominous, and they're like, the truth is buried. Like, is she standing in a cemetery? Like, did she get that letter and that's why she's here in the middle of the night in the thunderstorm? And she's like, no one else will be here now and she's about to dig up a grave. Like, we don't know. So if this was the very beginning of the book and this is all we know, we have to set it up for them, that mood from the very beginning. So I want you to try that again. And what do you think of when you usually have something that's like suspenseful and a little bit like, uncertainty and what's going to happen and duh, 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 kind of a feeling? What do you usually think that like a voice would be like there, creating that suspense?
Um, I guess usually probably a lower register, maybe even depending on what it is, maybe even a little bit of a whisperish kind of
Yeah.
thing
Like
going
a
on.
little bit like raspy maybe or
Yeah.
airy, maybe like yeah, I get what you're saying that it can have kind of texture to it
Yeah.
and it has that kind of like whispery kind of effect. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Cool. All right. So we're going to drop our pitch a little bit and then put more air into it. And remember, you're going to have a microphone too. So
Yeah.
when
Okay.
the microphone's there, you can set your amplification and whatnot however you want it. And you can take your microphone and be like, all right, I need it however, like, I'm gonna be my distance, and then I set my amplification, my input gain knob to however much I want to amplify. So I can go really soft. And that mic is going to pick it up. And then I can just amplify it. I can boost it, right? So you can get that mood and those hushed tones and that still will work great. All right, so let's go ahead and try that.
Detective Evelyn Graves arrived just past midnight. Her coat clung to her from the relentless downpour, her expression unreadable. In her gloved hand, she held a letter, anonymous, cryptic, 4 words, scrawled in hurried ink. The truth is buried.
Nice. Yes, good. The pacing was a little bit different that time, which I thought was nice. Like it sometimes would go a little bit faster, sometimes it was a little slower. Also, I definitely heard the tone quality change, and you went like a little deeper, but a little bit softer. That was really nice. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so what did you like about that take? How did that feel?
Um, I don't know. I was really just trying to adhere to the what we talked about with the punctuation. I was also trying to focus on keeping a lower register, which is not my
Hmm.
a natural way of speaking. And then I was a little bit worried about the 4 words at the end because I didn't really have a good plan for that. So
Oh,
I was
right.
kind
So you
of
were like, what do I
focused.
do there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like you made those words sound kind of like a little stronger and like a threat, you know?
I was
The truth
Like
is
I said, I don't
buried.
know what came
You
out
will
because
be
I really did
too.
not have a plan, and um,
It felt to me like maybe it was more of like a threat, like a we've buried the truth and soon we're gonna bury you too if you don't stop poking your nose around. Like I would have gotten away with it, if not for those meddling kids, that kind of a vibe there. So I felt like it was a little bit like suddenly like stronger and like more scary, like more threatening, which I thought worked great. So, it made me go like, oh, I didn't expect that. And where's the story gonna go next, So that was really exciting actually. So, sometimes you might be like, oh, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do with that. And then you try something and you go, oh, okay, that actually kind of worked great. So nice, good. And then I thought for contrast, so this is more of like a love story, right? So we've got this woman who seems like she's scared to like let love in, and he's like really wanting to connect with her, and he's like, I want this, I want to be with you, and she's like, feeling like nervous about it going in, but it seems like, this is when they're like moving past being acquaintances or friends or, whatever it is to being like, we're going to go for it. This is our chance at love. So this I feel like is going to have a very different kind of feel to it than the other because this is more romance, right? So we have a little bit of that, like tension at the start with her hesitancy. So since they say like she's hesitant, she's careful, she's guarded, I feel like, and like they talk about her breath catching, those kind of things. Like, I feel like they did a good job of having it sort of be choppy already with the punctuation, but you can sort of utilize that to yourself to play up that, like, she's hesitating, she's nervous, she's guarded, she's not sure about this, right? But then, like, and I feel like, you have the chance to like a big shift when it's like, oh, he reaches for her, his fingers graze her wrists, right? In that single touch, she feels this pull inside, So I feel like on all of those pauses, you can kind of have a shift be happening. And scenes like this, I feel like I always really want to be sure that it feels like the character, like you don't know what's going to happen next, but it's like this character is just discovering all of these things in the moment. It's unraveling all at once. So I want it to feel very spontaneous to the listener.
Mhm.
Um, and then what's cool too is you get to have the character voice. Now, for a lot of books, they'll like some of them, they'll be like, just read it in your normal voice, but like put the emotion there. Um, and sometimes they'll want the characters to all be different. And I would say like a happy in between for that sometimes people want is they're like, I want it to like sound like, okay, the character changed. So I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna talk like my normal self as the narrator, and then maybe the women I'll take a little higher pitched, and then the men I'll just drop a little in pitch. And then I put some of the like energy of that moment into it. So I don't create necessarily like a full character voice in those moments. So it depends on what the publisher or the author want for that particular thing. Like the audiobook that I was listening to earlier today, she doesn't do necessarily entirely different character voices. Like it's still her. She doesn't do anything that's like so extreme that it would be super fatiguing or anything. But she'll like give this one a little bit of a lilt to their voice. And then this one's a little more like punchy with the way they say their words. And then this one has a little bit of an accent, and so she doesn't do anything crazy fatiguing to her voice, but she does little subtle changes so that you can be like, oh, the character changed there, and so that helps, I think. So I think for him, we could do where you don't necessarily have to like sound like a man, but where we just know that he's talking, right? So you have that greater than time pause. I also, whenever I have a character voice, I always give it a little more space before and after it. So it's like pause, line the character would say, pause, narration, narration, narration. So I try to make it kind of stand out. Um, and so I feel like you could, I mean, it's kind of up to you. But I probably drop and pitch a little bit so like it, it feels like it's a manly voice. But also like it says he's murmuring, his voice is almost like a whisper, So like I don't think it has to be like big boomy like man voice, So it can be kind of subtle. because also we don't want to yank them out of the story either. And I think sometimes when we try to create like totally different character voices in a scene that's like a little more serious like this, it can feel kind of silly or like distract them. So I don't want to pull them out of the story. I want to always keep that kind of flow going. Um, so let's go ahead and just try it and see what you come up
Okay.
with. Our little like romantic spark moment.
Isla hesitated. She had always been careful, always guarded, but something in the way he watched her, as if he already knew the words she longed to say, made her breath catch. He reached for her, fingers grazing her wrist, and in that single touch she felt the pull of something greater than time. You feel it too, don't you? He murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper.
Nice. Yeah. So I definitely heard the shift with like, this is a character here, not the narrator, but it totally flowed. It wasn't jarring. It wasn't anything that like pulled me out of the story. That was really nice. Yes. Good. Great. And I also really liked, and like, sometimes people might feel like kind of cheesy or whatever, but you did such a beautiful job with that. Like one thing I noticed you doing, the words that you played off of the important words and then the meaning of the words. So like pull of something greater than time. Like, words like pull, like you kind of stretched there, like um greater, you made that word sound like important, or like he reached for her, fingers grazing her wrist. Like it was very like delicate on graze. So I really liked those strong point of views that were coming out and how you kind of infused the way that you expressed those words with the meaning of the words. That was really nice. Really, really nice. Um, and you weren't afraid to play um with the pacing a little bit, where you let it have moments where it would stretch a little bit more and then moments where it maybe sweeps through, and that can be, I think, kind of, those very emotional moments can be like that, where it's like frenzied in one moment and then it's slower and uncertain in another. And then it's very strong and certain in another spot, and so like you can have those pacing shifts happening. And you did a really beautiful job of that with like in that single touch. It was like hope fluttering in her chest, like I loved it. It was great. It was really nice. Yeah, so I think we definitely were getting that mood shift. So how would you say this script is different than the one prior with the detective lady?
Oh, I mean, I think I still used a little bit of, of a little bit lower of a register, but I
Yeah.
I guess because I don't know, I was trying to be more romantic about it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just
It's a little maybe more like sultry or like
yeah,
a little more
more like
seductive feeling
enticing, I guess.
or
Whereas the other one,
enticing. Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
the other one's more um trying to, yeah, get you in a more creeped
Right,
out.
like tingles on your
Yeah.
skin, like eerie, creepy, crawly feelings. Yeah, yeah. It's funny how sometimes you can use the same tool in two things that are drastically different, and it comes out, and you're like, oh, I used the same tool, but they're so different from each other, and it worked. So it's kind of fun to identify, oh, these are some things that I did similarly in each, and then these are the things that I did differently in each, right? Like I would say, I know that you tried to make it a little um like husky eerie kind of sounding on the other, like I would say like almost like hissy at moments, and like um but then in this one it was like softer but in a more like delicate, um like a soft caress kind of way. So there it was like tiptoeing and like eerie music and like shh, like creepy crawly things in the night. And then this one was a little more of that like soothing, um like almost like singing a lullaby or something. It's that more like intimate feeling. So it's really interesting that it's like, oh, I can go like softer in both and it can feel like a little bit whispery in both, but we can evoke a totally different feeling. So really nice. So identifying what's the same and what's different. And I think part of it was those strong points of view. So when you have words like a mystery shrouded in shadows, and then you have stuff like, you know, um, you know, uh, hurried ink, that you can like say that like scrawled in hurried ink that they quickly scribbled it out, right? They didn't have a lot of time. They had to like real quick scribble it out. Um, playing with things like that or like, she felt the pull of something greater than time, So I really think that was something that worked beautifully for both. And in narration, especially fiction narration, those strong points of view are going to make a huge difference. Yeah, so that I think is a really good key takeaway today. Really nice. Yeah, so I would love to try maybe some other genres next time. Like we could do like a sci-fi, we could do like an adventuring explorer, like a pirates or something. And we could, like fantasy world, like mermaids, it could be anything. We could do something that is like a children's book could be a fun thing to do because that would have a very different feel. And even like different ages of children's books are going to be read in different ways. Like I feel like, you look at something like Teletubbies, something for babies is going to be very different than a kid who's like 7 and then a kid who's like 11, you know? They're going to have different places. So, you've got like Zaboomafoo would be for like a little bit older kids, because they're like educational, but it's like outgoing and fun. And we've got the animals and then you maybe have something for like a little bit of older kids. So it's like, maybe struggles they might be going through at school and like working through real life problems. Like, oh my gosh, I failed my math test. So it's like it changes, or it's like Teletubbies just like bright colors and fun sounds and like simple dances and like Teletubby bye bye. And then the baby's like bye bye. So you look at things for different ages, and that's going to be different as well. So I feel like just finding contrast, finding things that are going to be different genres, different feel, that action adventure, romance. You could have something that's like set in a different time period that's like historical fiction. You can have um, something that's more like intense, like action warrior kind of thing, all kinds of things. You could have like coming of age, like young adult. So I feel like you can have different energy for the different types of books that you're narrating. So exploring fiction, I think, could be a really fun thing to keep doing next time because there are a lot of different categories. So yeah. Awesome work today. I hope you had fun.
I did. Thank you. And I'm sorry for all the crazy
Oh,
input
it's okay.
today.
I
It
get
might
it.
be like this for a
It's
couple
life.
more weeks.
I've had times when I'm like, oh, I need a second. My puppy really has to go potty. I'll be right back, and like, it is what it is. Or I have a really important delivery today and I have to sign for it. So you're just like, or like, I don't know when it's coming. And it's like, hold that thought, be right back, and you go like sign and you're back. So it happens. It's life.
Thank you for being flexible.
So,
I appreciate it.
yeah. Alrighty. So have a great rest of your week and I'll see you soon.
See you
Good
later. Thank you.
night.